Welcome to World at Work TV. I'm Allison Avalos, and I'm joined today by Bertha Masuda of Vivient Consulting. And we're talking about some new uses in deferred compensation to pay for performance. So Bertha, this is surely not the traditional ways that deferred compensation has been used. Talk about what this looks like when you're using it to pay for performance.
There are forward-thinking companies now that are using deferred compensation to pay for performance, and it looks like different things. And one of the examples I like to explain is a situation where there was a company spinoff of a retail chain. And what they wanted to do was to retain the store managers for at least 5 years. And they had set up a contract to specify the bonus and the salary for these folks. But what was really missing was the long-term incentive component. And so we developed a program where the store managers would earn a percentage of the cumulative net cash flow over 5 years. And at the end of the 5-year period, they would make a deposit into the deferred compensation account, and that could be paid out over time.
And was there a performance component to this, or just something that was more used for retention?
Well, it was both, actually.
Okay.
So really the performance aspect was the higher the net cash flow for the store that the person managed, that piece of it would be put into the deferred compensation, but they couldn't get it until the 5 years was up.
So what are some of the benefits and drawbacks of using deferred compensation as a pay-for-performance tool?
Well, the biggest benefit of deferred compensation is its tax efficiency, and that's something that can't be replicated in any other of the normal pay components. The tax efficiency is twofold. One is that you're not taxed until you receive the compensation, and that's usually a long way out. And the second piece of it is until it's actually distributed, the amount actually can grow on a return on a tax-free basis. And it's really that compounding effect that creates a significant benefit for executives. In terms of drawbacks, really there are two drawbacks. The first is that the deferred compensation accounts are subject to creditor risk. So if the company should fall into bankruptcy, that amount would be subject to the creditor's claims. The other drawback is because of the new regulations, namely the Internal Revenue Code Section 409A, these kind of programs have been very complex to administer and to make sure that companies avoid all the potential potholes that could happen.
So using deferred compensation this way probably isn't the prevalent practice. Do you think that's because it just hasn't occurred to employers that there's an opportunity here, or that maybe those drawbacks are getting in the way, and are there ways to mitigate that?
Right. So really what's happening now is that deferred compensation has always been in place. And I think with the new emphasis on pay for performance through traditional forms where you have a voluntary deferral on the part of the executive to defer a portion of the salary or bonus, that's still occurring. Really what companies are focusing now is putting the contribution based on pay metrics. And so we are seeing more and more of these, we call them ad hoc matches from the company or company contributions. That's increasing in prevalence, but it's a different way of thinking about it than has been used in the past.
And are we talking about broad-based use for all employees, or are we still talking about that more senior level?
Yes, these programs really are for the most senior level executives, and they are defined as the non-qualified deferred compensation plans. And really the way that the regulators look at it too is the population that's being offered to being able to negotiate for themselves in these situations as well.
So you've worked with a lot of organizations. Are there criteria that would tell an organization whether this is a good fit or not for them?
In terms of a good fit, really it comes down to a couple of factors. Where it really is a benefit is where companies would like to have a vehicle that looks like and has the economics of real equity, but they're unable to do so. So one of those factors might be a publicly traded company that somehow has to conserve real shares. Another situation would be for a subsidiary of a much larger organization, and they want to tie their executives to the subsidiary value. So again, they don't have their own separate subsidiary stock, but they could mimic what that could look like with a deferred compensation plan. We also see the situation where there are private companies where the shareholders want to give executives a long-term incentive but don't want to use real equity.
And how about any scenarios where this really wouldn't be a good fit? Any organizational situations, cultures, design elements that really would tell you this is probably not the right solution?
Well, from a tax efficiency standpoint, because that really is the benefit, organizations that are pass-through taxation entities like S Corps, LLCs, and nonprofit organizations, these really don't work for them. And also for C Corps or for-profit companies that have a risk of bankruptcy. So the really cyclical industries that, you think about real estate or airlines, that in a downturn, there's a high risk of bankruptcy. That doesn't typically work as well.
Thank you so much. For World at Work TV, I'm Allison Avalos.